Right now, a single artificial intelligence data center proposed for upstate New York is slated to consume the exact same amount of electricity as, well, 50,000 average American homes.
Just one building.
Yeah, just one single building. I mean, we have spent the last 2 decades talking about the cloud as this, weightless, invisible realm where data just kind of magically floats in the ether.
Right, but the cloud isn't in the sky. It's actually a sprawling, incredibly thirsty, deafeningly loud factory sitting in someone's backyard.
Exactly, which completely shatters the illusion that our digital and political lives operate independently of the physical world.
Absolutely.
So welcome to another custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you. Today, our mission is to synthesize the July 19th, 2026 news brief from the Daily Tech Reader.
And we are going to extract the most critical insights you need to be perfectly well-informed, just skipping all that usual information overload.
Right. We have sources today spanning global geopolitics, artificial intelligence, space launches, and even global sports.
Which, on the surface, those sound like completely distinct sectors, like they have nothing to do with each other.
Right, totally separate.
But analyzing the data, a very clear through line emerges today. We are moving violently out of an era of pure theory and into an era of physical consequence.
Physical consequence, I like that.
Yeah, the abstract worlds of, say, software and diplomacy are colliding head-on with the tangible limits of land, water, electricity, and, honestly, the unglamorous logistics of moving heavy things around the globe.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because we have to start with the ultimate shared human experience happening right this second, which is the World Cup final.
Oh, yeah. The scale of this is just massive.
Staggering. I mean, you have Argentina versus Spain at the New York, New Jersey Stadium. It is this incredible generational clash on the pitch. You've got Lionel Messi and Julian Alvarez on one side, up against the Spanish midfield led by Rodri and the teenage phenomenon Lamine Yamal.
And the context surrounding the match is really just as significant as the game itself. This is the culmination of the most geographically ambitious World Cup ever staged. It's a civic spectacle operating at maximum capacity.
Yeah, and it's underscored by the fact that the leaders of the 3 host nations are actually in attendance, right? You've got President Trump, Mexican President Sheinbaum, and Canadian Prime Minister Carney all there.
Which is a logistical feat in itself.
And just to be completely clear for you listening, we are looking at their attendance purely as a factual metric of the event's gravity.
Exactly.
When you have 3 national leaders in one place, extended security perimeters, global watch parties stretching from Buenos Aires to Madrid, it is like the absolute peak of visible shared culture.
It really is.
But looking at the geopolitical sources today, I can't shake this analogy. It is like watching the lead actor perform a highly choreographed magic show on stage while, completely ignoring that a fire is quietly breaking out in the back of the theater.
That is a great way to put it.
Because while the world watches the pitch in New York, the hidden logistical machinery of a very real, escalating global conflict is grinding into gear in the Middle East.
Yeah, that captures the disconnect perfectly. Because while the broadcast focuses on the stadium, the United States has just executed an 8th consecutive night of strikes against Iran.
8 nights.
8 nights. And this is a direct retaliatory cycle following the deaths of 2 American service members in Jordan, with a third, unfortunately, still missing.
Right.
But this has expanded far beyond a localized skirmish now. Tehran has already targeted sites connected to the U.S. military across Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia.
And the military mobilization detailed in the brief here is what really catches my eye, because the U.S. operation now involves over 50,000 personnel.
That's a massive footprint.
Right. They are targeting air defenses, coastal surveillance, drone storage facilities, and the administration continues to describe its goals in very narrow terms, like punishing the Jordan attack and securing shipping lanes.
Right. The official messaging is very contained.
But you don't deploy 50,000 personnel just to send a brief message. I mean, what is the actual operational footprint here?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the stated goals and the physical footprint are telling 2 entirely different stories.
Okay.
What we are witnessing is a global micro-trend of what I'd call logistical escalation. It's not just about battlefield announcements anymore.
So what is it about?
It's about placement. Take the movement of aerial refueling aircraft to Israeli airports like Ben Gurion, for example. That is a highly critical data point.
Because they need fuel for the jets.
Exactly. But an aerial refueling tanker isn't a weapon. It is a geographic tether. It is essentially the equivalent of putting a floating gas station in the middle of a desert highway.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Suddenly, your fighters and bombers can remain airborne indefinitely. They can strike targets hundreds of miles further away. So extending that operational range, coupled with 50,000 personnel on the ground, that suggests preparation for a prolonged, sustained campaign, regardless of what the diplomatic phrasing says.
Which means the ripple effects are about to hit global supply chains hard. I mean, moving 50,000 troops and running a desert military campaign requires an absolute ocean of fuel, right in the geographic bottleneck of global energy.
Right in the center of it.
The Strait of Hormuz is right in the crosshairs, and that tiny stretch of water handles a fifth of all global oil and liquefied natural gas.
And shipping through Hormuz is now heavily restricted. Vessels are facing military activity, skyrocketing insurance premiums, and entirely uncertain routes.
It's a logistical nightmare.
It is. And we are seeing the physical consequences downstream immediately. Energy importing developing nations always get hit first.
Right.
For instance, Bangladesh is currently experiencing reduced LNG deliveries from Qatar. Not because Qatar doesn't have the gas, but simply because the cargo ships literally cannot exit the Gulf safely.
Let's translate this to the listener's wallet for a second. Looking at the market data in the brief, Brent crude, which is the global benchmark for oil prices, is hovering near $88 a barrel.
Right.
And West Texas Intermediate, the benchmark for U.S. domestic oil, is near $83. This puts American gas prices at about $3.84 a gallon, which is inching dangerously close to that politically sensitive $4 threshold.
Very sensitive threshold.
Now, the source mentions that demand destruction might eventually restrain these prices. And I want to push back on that phrasing a bit.
Sure, go ahead.
If prices go down because people stop buying as much fuel, isn't that just a self-correcting market? Like, I choose to drive less, so demand drops and prices fall. Isn't that a good thing?
I mean, that assumes the consumer actually has a choice, which kind of misunderstands what demand destruction looks like in practice.
Okay, what does it look like?
It doesn't mean commuters are happily riding bicycles to work to save a few dollars. Demand destruction is a symptom of deep systemic economic stress. It means independent freight companies going bankrupt because they literally can't afford the diesel to run their trucks. It means factories shutting down production shifts. It means families having to choose between buying groceries and filling the tank just to get to their jobs.
Wow, okay. That's a lot darker than it sounds on paper.
Yeah, wealthy buyers can absorb these price shocks for a while, but developing nations simply cannot afford the higher spot prices. And the spot price is the premium cost you pay to buy a cargo of fuel immediately on the open market, rather than through a pre-negotiated long-term contract.
And Wall Street is reacting to this physical friction in real time. We are seeing a profound market rotation right now.
We really are.
On one hand, the broader market looks incredibly healthy. 90% of the first chunk of S&P 500 companies beat expectations, and overall earnings growth is projected at 26%.
Which is huge.
It is. But then you look at the semiconductor index, and it dropped roughly 17% in July.
And that drop illustrates another market microtrend we're tracking: selective defense.
Selective defense.
Yeah, investors aren't panicking and selling everything, but they are looking at the geopolitical reality and moving their capital away from vulnerable physical infrastructure buildouts.
They're seeking safety.
Exactly. They are rotating into energy stocks, defense contractors, and companies with immediate, reliable cash flow.
Speaking of vulnerable physical infrastructure, investors are fleeing semiconductors because the very silicon chips driving the artificial intelligence boom are suddenly hitting a literal wall of water and electricity.
Yes, the physical reality check of AI. That brings us to the data center protests. Over the weekend, coordinated pushback erupted across 125 different U.S. locations over AI facilities.
125 locations. That is not a small movement.
No, this has rapidly morphed into a highly contentious land use and utility issue across the country.
And the anger seems to stem from a complete lack of transparency. Local officials have been signing these non-disclosure agreements with developers, completely shutting the public out of the process.
Which naturally makes people suspicious.
Of course. Now communities are demanding to know exactly how much water and electricity these centers will drain. We mentioned the New York moratorium at the top of the show. The one on 50-megawatt facility is consuming the power of 50,000 homes.
Right.
But help me understand the water aspect, because that confuses people. Why does a computer system need a town's water supply?
It all comes down to evaporative cooling.
Okay.
These advanced AI servers run incredibly hot, just massive amounts of heat. And to prevent the silicon components from literally melting under the computational load, the facilities have to cycle millions of gallons of water through cooling towers.
Millions of gallons.
Millions. They evaporate it to pull the heat away from the servers. So a municipality is sacrificing a huge percentage of its potable water supply and its grid capacity for a building that honestly employs maybe a few dozen security and maintenance staff once construction is actually finished.
Which introduces this fascinating new concept in the tech world, social licensing.
Yes, exactly.
For the past decade, the tech industry just assumed that if they had the engineering capability and the money to build something, they would just build it.
Move fast and break things, right?
Exactly. But technical capability is no longer enough. Public permission is the new bottleneck.
And that is exactly the friction we are seeing play out. The traditional developer argument has always been, hey, we are bringing jobs to your town.
Right. Economic boon.
But that falls flat when the facility is mostly automated. So communities are now forcing developers to negotiate binding community benefit agreements.
Like what? What do they have to do?
Well, companies might have to pay out of pocket to build their own dedicated power substations or construct closed-loop water recycling systems so they aren't draining the municipal supply.
And you can see this physical reality check reflected directly in the stock market. Apple just surpassed NVIDIA in market capitalization.
Which is a huge signal.
On the surface, that's really confusing. NVIDIA makes the most sought-after AI chips in the entire world. Why would the market suddenly favor Apple?
Because of the underlying mechanics of how AI is actually used, NVIDIA dominates the hardware required for cloud-based training.
Massive data centers.
Right, the data centers that actually build the AI models. Apple, on the other hand, controls the distribution. They control edge-based inference.
And edge-based meaning?
Meaning running the AI directly on the consumer device in your hand, your phone, your watch. The market shifting its favor to Apple suggests investors believe the heavy infrastructure build-out for those giant data centers is peaking.
I see.
The real value now lies in delivering AI efficiently to consumers without funding those astronomical, highly contentious data center costs.
We even see Meta negotiating to lease compute capacity from Anthropic rather than building more of their own. It is essentially the tech equivalent of like an airline choosing to lease its airplanes because fuel costs are too unpredictable rather than buying the jets outright.
That's a perfect analogy. And zooming out to the global stage, the geopolitics of AI are fracturing along these exact same physical lines.
How so?
Well, China is utilizing a 29-country coalition called the World AI Cooperation Organization. Beijing is using open-source AI models as a form of digital diplomacy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're offering affordable AI access to developing governments that simply do not have the electrical grids to build their own data centers. So it's soft power through software.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the U.S. coalition is taking the complete opposite approach. They are emphasizing highly restricted, trusted supply chains.
It's a very delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
Because openness expands your global influence, but limiting access protects your national security.
Right. And you have to choose which one to prioritize.
Because we have power grids maxing out, energy supplies choked by military logistics, and local communities fighting over water rights. How do governments even begin to track a physical breakdown on this kind of scale?
Well, increasingly, they have to leave the planet.
Space.
Space is becoming the ultimate high ground for managing Earth's tangible limits. And the barrier to reach that high ground is dropping incredibly fast.
Yeah, look at India's Skyroot Aerospace. They just successfully launched their Vikram 1 mission into a 450-kilometer orbit.
And what makes the Vikram 1 launch so critical isn't just that it reached orbit, it's how the rocket was actually built.
Right, they used 3D-printed engine components.
Which fundamentally changes the logistics of rocket manufacturing. Traditional rocket engines require months of complex machining, welding, and assembling hundreds of individual parts by hand.
It's slow and expensive.
Very.
Huh.
But 3D printing allows a company to print complex thrust chambers as a single unified piece in a matter of days.
That's wild.
It drastically lowers the physical and financial barrier to reaching orbit. It introduces a brand new private player into the small launch market. And India is aggressively targeting a $44 billion space economy by 2033.
But the paradox here is just striking. I mean, we rely on orbital infrastructure, satellites literally hundreds of kilometers in space, just to monitor compounding ground-level emergencies in our own backyards.
It's the micro-trend of observation becoming ordinary.
It's a profound irony, though. We have this incredibly advanced modern age, and we have to rely on a 3D printed rocket to figure out if it is safe to breathe the air in our own neighborhoods.
Yeah, it really puts it in perspective.
The sources detail over 100 million people currently under air quality alerts in the U.S. alone.
Because of the Canadian wildfires.
Right, where over 100 fires are burning completely out of control.
And while the North deals with fire and smoke, Texas is simultaneously dealing with catastrophic flooding from stalled atmospheric circulation.
I want to clarify that weather term for the listener, just in case. Stalled atmospheric circulation happens when the high-level winds that normally push storm systems across the continent simply weaken or halt completely.
You just stop moving.
Yeah, the storm gets trapped in one place and relentlessly dumps rain over the exact same geographic area. They have seen over 2 feet of rain in some Texas counties. 2 feet.
And the physical toll on the human body in these scenarios is immediate. The fine smoke particles from those fires bypass normal bodily defenses, which necessitates well-fitted N95 masks and indoor HEPA filters just to avoid cardiovascular stress.
And in Texas?
In Texas, the floodwaters mean toxic mold begins growing in residential drywall within 24 to 48 hours.
That's terrifyingly fast. And looking back to the Middle East, the infrastructure warfare there is causing immediate health emergencies too. There have been attacks on desalination plants in the Gulf.
Which is devastating.
Right. When you interrupt the water supply during extreme desert heat, you threaten basic sanitation, hospitals, and dialysis centers all at once. Health is no longer just about the quality of the doctor in your local clinic.
No, your baseline health is increasingly determined by the resilience of your infrastructure, your access to clean air, power, and water.
The paradigm in public policy really seems to be shifting toward, prevention beyond medicine.
Exactly. Governments are realizing that healthcare systems will completely collapse if the environmental stressors aren't managed first.
Which completely recontextualizes this next point from the sources. England is moving to ban high-caffeine energy drinks for teenagers under 16 next year.
Yeah, I saw that.
On its own, it sounds like standard, nanny state regulation.
Yeah.
But viewed through this lens of physical resilience, it actually makes sense.
Oh.
Their sleep and anxiety levels are severely degraded by everything going on. The state is stepping in to regulate the physical well-being of the population because the baseline environment is just too stressful to handle otherwise.
Precisely. It all comes back to managing the physical resilience of the population and the systems they rely on to survive.
So, with all of these incredibly complex systems, colliding satellites, AI data centers, power grids, flood responses, who actually manages the fallout? Who steps in when the digital command fails in the physical world?
That is the million-dollar question. And it's entirely reshaping the landscape of work and careers right now.
Okay, what's the new defining trait?
The defining professional trait of the near future is going to be operational credibility.
Operational credibility.
Because the digital world now carries such heavy physical consequences, organizations desperately need skilled trades just as much as they need software developers.
Oh, interesting.
We need industrial cooling specialists, grid engineers, and high-voltage electricians to physically build and maintain all this growth. You can't just code a cooling tower into existence.
So what does this mean for you listening? If you are looking to future-proof your career, it sounds like learning to write code isn't the golden ticket it used to be.
Not anymore, no. AI can already generate the code.
So you need to transition from being a creator of digital commands to an auditor of physical outcomes.
Exactly. As autonomous AI agents take over routine software production, human workers must become verifiers. We need people who can read API logs.
And an API log is basically
essentially the digital receipt of an AI communicating with another software system.
Okay.
We need people who can translate those logs into a human-readable summary that proves the AI actually took the correct action in the real world.
Especially with the rise of deepfake impersonation in corporate environments, which is getting scary. Give me a concrete example of how this human verification actually plays out day to day.
Sure. Let's say an autonomous corporate AI agent receives an urgent digital request to wire $100,000 for emergency external server cooling units.
Seems plausible enough.
Right. The AI checks the syntax, sees the authorization codes match, and prepares to execute the transfer. But the human auditor steps in, reads the API log, looks at the physical reality of their infrastructure, and realizes, wait a minute, Our new facility uses closed-loop liquid cooling, not external evaporative units.
Ah,
This request doesn't match our physical reality. It is a deep fake. The human is the one who bridges the gap between the digital command and the physical truth.
because you cannot blindly trust a digital command anymore. Independent human verification is completely mandatory.
It's non-negotiable now.
And this demand for operational credibility goes all the way up to executive workforce planning, too. Corporate HR teams are now routinely designing policies around environmental disruptions.
It's a huge part of HR now.
Planning for safe building reentry after a flood or, adjusting remote work protocols during heavy wildfire smoke is just standard operations now.
Because closed-door development and black box algorithms generate massive public distrust.
Right.
The most valuable professional today is the one who can step into the gap between a highly complex system and the community it affects, and transparently explain how it actually functions in the real world.
It is remarkable how interconnected this all is when you step back. Let's synthesize the journey we've taken today.
Let's do it.
We started by looking at the massive civic spectacle of the World Cup, where all eyes are focused on the pitch. But just off stage, we uncovered the grinding logistical costs of war in the Middle East, with 50,000 personnel extending their military reach through aerial refueling.
Which is a huge physical strain.
Exactly. And that logistical strain bleeds directly into global energy markets, raising the cost of fuel and destroying demand in developing nations.
Which then led us to the realization that our most advanced technology, artificial intelligence, is constrained by those exact same physical resources.
Of water and power.
Right. The tech industry is hitting a wall made of water rights and electrical grids. And we are relying on 3D printed space infrastructure to monitor the fallout of these physical limits, from atmospheric flooding to wildfires.
And ultimately, managing all this chaos comes down to human auditors who have the operational credibility to bridge the digital code and the concrete reality.
So whether you are prepping for a boardroom meeting to defend your company's AI infrastructure budget, or you're just checking an app on your phone to see if the local air quality is safe enough for a jog, the digital and physical worlds are now irreversibly intertwined.
The illusion of a weightless, consequence-free digital realm is officially over. Every single byte of data has a physical footprint.
It really does.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on today. We talked a lot about social licensing, the idea that public permission is the new bottleneck for infrastructure. If that is true, what happens when a community simply says no to the next massive leap in progress? We have always assumed the future would be divided by who has access to the best technology. But what if the future is actually divided by which communities allow it to be plugged in?
That is a fundamental question every tech CEO and local mayor will have to answer very, very soon.
Something to think about the next time you marvel at the magic show while wondering if anyone is checking the theater for smoke. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.